Right, this is going to be another one of my Patreon donated discussions. Only one guest for this one. It's going to be Zen, obviously regular upon these. We were going to have a couple other people come, but they just couldn't make it last minute. So whatever, we'll do another one. I think what I might do for those ones is now that especially my time's got a bit more efficient, I can actually do these a little bit more often. So we'll probably do one soon enough. Right, let's start out then. Do you have any burning topics you want to discuss?
Actually, I wanted to discuss a bit about Simple because I haven't heard you talk about it too much recently. And I mean, he's obviously still best player of all time. He was doing great form, but then he had the dip, and now he has Guardian messing around. Do you think he'll come back to the top? Do you think there's a risk that he's just going to, stay very good, but not at the old level? How do you see him next year, let's say?
Sure. Well, I mean, one thing that this will sound really counterintuitive to a lot of people, but this is a great example of where you have to be honest if you're going to analyze the game. And I mean, like, not just me as an outside person, but like a player, a teammate, a coach, an organization. Because what people do with players like Simple, where when they come into the scene, what makes them very difficult is they're essentially selfish. Like, they only know their way to play the game. You have to do everything their way. They're the best. Every skill that they have is the best. Any skill they don't have doesn't matter. And so because someone like that will naturally be very selfish, I use the term naturally, obviously, like not literally coming out the womb like that, but that's how they developed before they came to esports. The problem is most sports culture, all the language around it is about trying to break people like that from being too selfish. So what you hope is, if you tell a Kobe Bryant or someone like that, or Michael Jordan, like, well, pass a bit more and like trust your teammates a bit, then what happens is over time, they'll trust them a little bit more. And if they trust them just enough, they'll win. Like, they don't need to be like the most unselfish guy. They just need to do it a little bit because you still want them to be Michael Jordan, don't you? You still want them to take over the game when they need to. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard this brilliant story that actually Michael Jordan himself told Kobe Bryant when Kobe Bryant was young, because since they both had the same coach, Phil Jackson, when Phil Jackson joined the Lakers and he understood in this team, my equivalent of Michael Jordan isn't even actually supposed to be the best player. So if he's just hogging the ball all the time, the team's not going to run. So he told Michael Jordan, will you explain to him what your philosophy was when you had to share the ball more? And Michael Jordan basically told him exactly what I'm about to tell you. He said, what you do is, you try to score roughly 6 points in the first quarter, 6 points in the second quarter, 6 points in the third quarter. That way, no matter what happens, you're going to get near like the 20 points, which at the time, 20 points per game was like, what a top player should score. And then he says, and what you do is, then in the fourth quarter, whenever you think you need to win the game, you take over the game. But you only do it in the fourth quarter. That way you get all your teammates involved. You're not being too greedy. You kind of, you notice there's even a clever element where you're sort of learning to see like the pace of the game there and when you should push the button instead of just like going hard from minute one, And basically what you do is you want that person on the one hand to just like ease off being selfish a little bit, but be selfish at the right time. Because ultimately it's not being selfish actually when you're the best player and you take over in the moment when the best player has to. That's being responsible. You're the only one who can do that. You can't throw it to your teammate and have him do that, as certain players in NBA history found out actually. So the problem, if you bring it back to Simple, is because he was the most ridiculous person who thought he had to have everything his way at the beginning, when someone like that encounters the concept, you actually then need to be very careful it doesn't go too far the other way. And in Simple's case, it did. Because everyone in the whole scene practically fucking bullied him that he was a terrible teammate. That he now thinks to be a good teammate means you can't even call out a player who is objectively shit on your team. You notice he's never done that with Zeus, Edward, Simple. He never ever did it at any point in time. Even when he dropped literally 40 plus in that Starladder final and Zeus had 6 kills, he didn't say shit. He literally pretended, and I think he even said in an interview, like, I could have done more. He made it like he was the one who didn't live up to the expectation. So the problem is, we've now seen that go way too far with Guardian, where not only is Simple, apparently, at least outside, I won't comment on anything internally, but he's out externally not flaming him. But even worse, he's willing to limit his own game. So even right now, Simple's probably still top 3 player in the world. Like, he's still unbelievably good. The problem is, he's not Simple. He's not Simple of last year, who was like, let's face it, it's like the player you'd pick first in any draft of all time, wouldn't he? Like, if I get him, you can have whoever the fuck you want. Like, my team's set up to go. So the real problem in this scenario is he has to actually come to the conclusion, what I just said right there, which is that for Simple to be the best and for him to have the best chance to win and for Navi to have the best chance to win, Simple has to be Simple. He can't be whatever this new player is. Like, it would actually be fine. This is where CS is so difficult it's got so much nuance to it, is what he's trying to do now would actually work, in my opinion, if Guardian was even 70% of Guardian and FaZe.
Yeah.
But the problem is Guardian right now is like 20% of Guardian and FaZe. So, like, you notice Navi's not that far. Like, even in the games they lose, when they get a roll going, they are fucking scary. That team has so much firepower, even with Guardian sucking. So if he'd have been like, put it this way, I'm not joking. I mean, obviously you'd have to speak another language. If you just took Gratisfaction from 100 Thieves, and I purposely picked him, by the way, because he's an AWPer who I actually don't think's that good as a primary AWPer. He just kind of plays like semi-supportive, but he does his job and he actually plays with the team. If you put Gratisfaction and he could speak Russian on Navi, like, I think they would have won Epicenter. I think they would make finals of most tournaments. Like, they would be a really scary team. So the sad thing is, even Simple's not wrong. Like, he's actually managed to adapt to that new role where he's like, kind of almost like a space creator in some ways. He's actually done it very well. The problem is, this just isn't the time for that. It doesn't really work. So I don't know if you saw the other day, DK actually in one of his mailbags where he responds to like fan questions from Twitter, actually said basically that kind of like Navi knows that there's a problem with Guardian. They're going to do something within the CIS scene. They're probably going to replace him. So I hope he does come back to being that sort of player. But yeah, I find it kind of whack. The reason though why actually, I mean, I did a tweet along these lines today where I said that it's actually crazy how much people underrate Simple at the moment though. Like, they act as though he's in a slump. Like, what? He might have bad maps every now and then, but he still gets his numbers every event. Have people not seen this shit? Like, I know people saw that Blast Copenhagen. He averaged a kill per map, per round, per map. Like, that's unreal. Like, ZywOo doesn't do that per hour. So, like, and in fact, at the end of the year, you go and look at the end of the year at the stats of Simple and ZywOo. Now, the fan would tell you ZywOo was sick the whole time. At worst, he was number 2. And then they'll tell you Simple had a slump, right? Their stats are almost identical at the end of the year. How can that be? Yeah. That means either Simple was way better than ZywOo at the beginning, or this slump was overrated. And I would say it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Does that address what you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I was following the same issue there of maybe underrating him just because Navi isn't winning, at least, you know.
It's also just because he doesn't play the same flashy style now, you know. It doesn't look as crazy. Like, the thing about Simple and ZywOo is they not only put the kills on the board, like, they put them in front of your eyes as well. Like, the kills are incredible. Whereas, like, if the way he plays now is... It's more like in the vein of what like an Astralis player might play like, you know. Like, if they have crazy stats on paper, doesn't mean the POV is going to be straight fire to watch. You know, a lot of it might just be killing someone who were flashed or running in as a team and shooting people in the back or whatever, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I mean, I'm sure he'll return to a high level. It was just amazing to see when he was, you know, the best of all time in peak form. That was just insane.
The problem is, if you think about it from his perspective, right, this might sound fucked. And again, I think I've mentioned this on this show before, that even though in public he said all that stuff like, oh, I should have done more and I could have played better in 2018 when he didn't beat Astralis and stuff. Like, I think I've mentioned this before. I've talked to him in like outside of the game settings, and let's just say, almost like a wink, like he understands that that's not actually entirely true. But on some level, the problem is, the kind of mindset that lets you constantly improve at the game and make your individual game as good as he has does make you think, well, is there anything else I could do? Like, do I need to play a different style? Like, maybe if I could play a different role and someone else could do my role not as bad, which was the logic of bringing in Guardian to be the AWPer, maybe that's how we make the team better. Like, that's not necessarily stupid thinking. Like, it's just he's trying to problem solve, you know. The problem is realistically, if we could just go back in time to 2018 and just give him slightly better other teammates, probably wins anyway. So it's like he's kind of right and he's kind of not at the same time. So I don't blame him for doing that. But the reason I say that is I have faith, essentially, that if they either get a different player, and especially if they get a player who's not an AWPer, you will see 2018 Simple in 2020. Like, he will just go back to AWPing, he will get similar roles, and he will do a lot of the same things, and he will dominate the fucking game as well.
Yeah. And I mean that will be amazing, especially if ZywOo continues and if Astralis. I think that the main thing was, I think last time we were saying, okay, if Astralis didn't exist or if etc., there was always a team that was basically winning as a team when it was alone. And I
don't think there is that team now, mate. What's cool is, I might even do an article on this topic. What I love about the current Astralis is if 2018 Astralis didn't exist, this current Astralis are not far from being a contender for one of the best teams of all time. They've won a major, a whole bunch of tournaments, they get top 4 every tournament. But it just shows you how insane the 2018 one was. Because the 2018 one for me was I feel like they were 20% better than this team, and this team's the number 1 team in Counter-Strike. So the cool thing about that though is, unless you're Team Liquid, there are plenty of teams out there who they won't be a favourite against Astralis, but they'll beat Astralis. Certainly, it's happened already, obviously.
Yeah.
That's why it's so heartbreaking to be Team Liquid. But then again, I mean, I'll tell you right now, I've told Team Liquid players this. They have actually been very unlucky. If you look at tournaments, how many times they just get drawn against Astralis in the bracket. It's not like they meet them in the finals every time. So the thing that's kind of heartbreaking if you're the Team Liquid guys is, if EG's going to beat them, and Fnatic's going to beat them, and Mousespot's going to beat them, can I just fucking play that team? I've already seen Team Liquid can beat Mousesport. I've already seen them beat Fnatic. They could beat EG, they could beat all these fucking teams. So it's all they need is one of those teams to play Astralis in the semi, then they play Navi in the other semi, or Vitality, and then they go to the final and they beat that team. So, on the one hand, Team Liquid could have won a bunch of these tournaments. And then on the other hand, the downside is, because they know Astralis is the best, when Astralis beats them, it sort of psychologically breaks them a bit, even for the other teams. So that actually hasn't worked out so far, unfortunately.
Yeah. Moving to another similar favorite, what do you think of Kenny S? And particularly, in G2, it seems that the firepower, at least the highest form, are the non-French ones. Do you think that G2 and Kenny S should stick to the same approach? Do you think he will do better in a different French lineup?
The problem on that topic is there's the options are shit for that team. That's why I don't blame them. If you notice by the numbers, I've never thought this G2 lineup was good, by the way, but I've never blamed them for trying this gamble. I haven't blamed them for sticking with it to even, because for example, one of the reasons why you stick with it at the moment, even when it's not really working that well, I don't give a fuck that they won that shit tournament in Malta. Who cares? That wouldn't make you top 8 at a normal land. No one gives a shit. So the reason why you stick with it, though, is because now what you're trying to figure out is not if this 5-man lineup is really good and can be number 1. We know it can't be. It can't even be bloody top 10 barely. But what you want to figure out now is, like you're saying, the question is, do we go back to being all French? Is that going to make us really good? Or do we go fully international? Do we just start becoming less French and as a result keep just Kenny S and maybe that's Kenny S and Jax, or maybe that's just Kenny S. Maybe we get other players and it's crazy but with Kenny S, which by the way, not a fucking bad idea, right? Yeah. So at the moment, I would say the current diagnosis, in line with what you're saying, is yes. At the moment, you definitely want to have Nexa, Kenny S, probably Hunter, Jax maybe, and then, then we put a different 5th in or something like that. And the Jax angle, I'm even willing to trade on entirely. I think he just does his role fairly well, though, but he's not a monster player or anything. So the main issue I have with that one is, the funny thing is, as far as I can tell from watching them play, Nexa is a good example of a player who will, I think, probably always be underrated, because his game just doesn't look like mad flash, but he gets the fucking numbers. He gets his job done all the time, basically. Hunter is the player I'm a bit torn on, because he's a good example of why stats are really, really bad to look at if you look at them in too big a macro number. If you ever go and look at his event numbers, mate, there's nothing to write home about. He has one super good tournament every 5 lands, maybe. Other than that, he has literally pedestrian numbers. But if you watch him in the server, when he has a good map, he looks unbelievable. Looks really fucking good. You can see that he's related to Nico, basically. He has the similar game, but he's just not going to do Nico things all the time. So with a player like that, it's a bit like KNG. KNG's stats aren't that crazy, mate. People who love to rave about stats, I always just think, do you watch the game then? Why do you rave about stats if you're going to say KNG's really good? Because the eye test tells you KNG's a fucking banger. Yeah. But he does it every now and then. If he has, in fact, I think the same mentality he has that makes him have a sick game, I've seen this with some players, makes him have a shit game as well. He just pushes too hard when his game's off. He doesn't know how to sort of play at 70%, as it were. So for me, Hunter's a player like that. I would want him in a team and I would keep him around. He's worth the gamble. but he's not going to be a guy who carries your team as far as I can tell. So at the moment, my main issue with G2 is like the conditions for them to be good just happen way too infrequently. So you see them have some Dust 2 games where, yeah, they can literally beat anyone in the world, but then they can also lose to absolutely anyone in the top 10 on almost any other map and in a best of 3. So at that point in time, what's the fucking point in keeping the team? So to bring it all back to Kenny S, because that was more about like G2 as a team, I actually think Kenny S is actually, for the last 6 months, has been underrated in this G2 lineup, actually. If you go and look at his numbers, they're pretty good. If you watch him in the game, like, you have to understand, because he's not going to be 2015 Kenny S, it'll never look as impressive. You'll always feel like I always say this, the reason why you knew Simple was the best in 2018 is it almost became like a movie where you like the good guys fighting a bunch of bad guys and you just know he's going to win. It was like that in, like, you would watch him in a clutch and you weren't even thinking like, oh, I wonder if he just dies to this first guy holding an off angle. It's like, when he kills this guy, how's he going to kill the next guy though? Oh, fuck, he's probably going to have to no-scope. Oh, he did, yeah. Oh, and now he's going to have to win the one. Like, it felt inevitable, didn't it? Like, you just knew it was going to happen. Yeah. The problem is Kenny S isn't that player. Like, I don't know if he ever will be again or if he has even the drive to be. But he's still a fucking good player. Like, if we're talking AWPers, he's probably like the third best AWPer in the world or something, or fourth or something. He's still pretty fucking good. So my issue with him is I actually put it this way. I know him as on I would consider him of players a friend of mine. So I can say this without it being really disrespectful. He's not a very intelligent player. Like, that doesn't mean he's an idiot as a person, but he's just not he's not a very cerebral player. That's usually the term people use, right? Mm-hmm. So I kind of feel like in the game, he needs someone to set the game up around him. So, because this is why it's tough. If you look at the best teams Kenny S was in, this is one of the areas, by the way, mate, where I feel like I'm 10 levels ahead of some people on analysis, right? If you ask everyone about Kenny S in Titan, they just go on about Kenny S, right? Well, they're right. That was like 70% of what he did. It was him, and he was so incredible in skill level. They don't talk about the fact that he had one of the best IGLs of all time in Counter-Strike, set up the entire team and run all resources through him.
Yeah.
Like, that's the difference. When Nico was in Mouse Sports, he didn't have fucking someone like Existence there, did he? It was just him. When some of these players are on the squads, it's just them. Like, that's the part I feel like people miss in Kenny S's careers. Like, on the one hand, you give Kenny S the freedom to do what he wants to do, but you've got to set the rest of the team up around him. Like, I actually don't think, as counterintuitive as that sounds, that he thrives in a team that is like crazy, essentially. Like, everyone doing what they want and pogging or whatever. Like, He's not a pog player. I always tell people this. Watch Kenny S when he plays in stage matches, like show matches. Mm-hmm. Dude, he doesn't go off. Like he looks average when he's next to streamers. So I feel like he's someone where, if I had to guess, it's like, unfortunately, I know you don't follow American football, so the analogy is a tough one. It's like that video I did basically about the pocket, the concept of like, it's what Cole Zera did his entire fucking career, basically. If you create all the space where no one can flank him and no one's going to come behind him and he can go at his own pace and take the duels at his own, he'll be the best. But if you put him in the FaZe, as you've seen now, yeah, he'll have some games where he looks fucking average. And you're like, who the fuck's this guy? Oh, the person Thorin was telling you about years ago. But no one else saw that, did they? And I'm not saying I'm some fucking genius for doing that. Sad thing is, one of the reasons I don't actually get ahead of myself in the game and try to improve my analysis more and more and more is I don't look at these things and go, I'm a bloody genius, aren't I? Like, I joke when I say that. I actually just look at it and go, why is no one else fucking thinking about this? I'm telling you guys, like, think about it this way. Consider this factor. And the problem is, partly I have an abrasive nature, but partly people just aren't interested in look at the game that way. Because when you have a very simplistic way of looking at the game, well, you can just make everything fit. Like, the joke would be, in CS, what they do is, like, you know the meme of, like, oh, look, this idiot's trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It's worse than that. In CS, they just smash it until the square edges knock off and it becomes a round thing that goes through. That's how they do their analysis. Like, how many times have you seen this on Reddit, where a really sick player, could even be from 2 years ago, was really sick and now he's not as good, and someone says, it'll be a mega upvoted comment, I think everyone else just caught up. What does that even mean, caught up? Like why does he have to stay stationary? Why can't, it's a bit like, I don't know if you saw this, but on all the episodes of Listen Loco I did towards the end, where it was rumoured that Forgiven would come back, everybody, Loco, coaches, other pro players, they all gave the same mega NPC response where they would go, you have to understand though, Thorin, Forgiven can never be the best again, though, because the game's moved on a lot since then and other players have caught up and gone past him. And I would say every time, and they never got what I was saying. They thought I was being the biased fanboy. I would just say this. Like, why is Forgiven not allowed to improve and adapt? Like, if he became the best and rated the game, why can't he do that again? Why can't he, like, figure out what they figured out? Like, you notice they placed the limitation from their mind onto him. Like, that was never there in reality. But that's a way you make it fit into your, like, super simplistic analytical paradigm, you know? So, basically, I don't think NES will ever be the best again. But I also don't think he's necessarily got the right team around him at the moment. And so, I guess if I'm coming full circle, what I would do is I would definitely keep Nexa, Kenny S, Hunter. And what I would try and do with the other positions, this is why it's so heartbreaking, actually, if you consider what happened to G2 the last few years. Yeah. Dude, I would love to take those players and then put them with the supportive core of fucking OG. Yeah. Imagine bringing in Alexi B to be the IGL and bringing in NBK or Valdir. Like, that would be fucking god tier. There's a team. That's how you put together a squad. Because if you look at OG, that's what they don't have. The players they're gambling on are the players who haven't made it yet, you know, the Mantus of the world. Yeah. Who'd you rather have, Mantu or Kenny S? Like, now, what's sad is NBK would lie right to your face and go, I would have Mantu as potential. It's like, yeah, shut the fuck up, mate. Like, it's not an interview anymore now.
Yeah.
What do you think about it? I assume you're still a fan of Kenny S, right? He's always a fun player to watch.
Yeah, and I also like these all-time greats. I mean, I really like looking at the HLTV, let's say, top 20 of the beginning of the game and seeing which ones are still there. And Kenny S is one of the very few that's actually, it's probably better than everyone that was above him at the time. So that's still amazing to me. But if he's going to be top, and basically my broader concern is just, there's a lot of teams here in the top 10 to 20 that have, if you look at the names and it was 3 years ago, they seem amazing teams, or at least they seem to have a chance. But they can't. Someone else has to come down, and I haven't seen who's coming down. So that you have like NIP, G2, MIBR, North. Crazy is a bit different, but you have a lot of these teams that are in the same problem. So only one of these can actually become great again. It can happen to MIBR and Kenny S. So yeah, that's my broader concern about these teams and players that were.
But here's what no one wants to hear, mate. Here's the uncomfortable truth that would make. Put it this way: if I was the GM of most of these teams, their teams would run very differently than they run now. Because one of the worst problems that still exists in CSGO, and it comes actually from 1.6, this used to be a problem back then, is the concept of tenure, like how long you've been in the team and what your status in the team is. Yeah. Now, you might naively imagine, like a lot of fans would, that that's not the way you do it. You do it on performance and like, think about it, right? The best example would be, the player Borup from Heroic?
No.
Basically, Heroic, who just finished top 4 Epicenter, like, until this Epicenter run, they were just like a team that would come like, fucking 13th at a big LAN, or they'd go to tier 2 and come in the final of DreamHack Open, That's who they were as a team. And what they did was, when some of these players, Blame F and some of the others left, they recruited this guy Borup because he was like the star player of Tricked, which was Hunden's team.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, they then put him into Heroic, and at Epicenter, he literally was shit right up until, like, I think the quarterfinals or something. And the reason he was shit is because in Tricked, he was the Kenny S in Titan, where they were setting everything up around him and letting him go off on his game, right?
Yeah.
Even though that is what impressed them and made them want him to be in Heroic, when they recruited him into Heroic, they just gave him a totally different role. They just gave him whatever role was left. Now, you might think, why the fuck would you do, like, why recruit, like, for example, if you're going to recruit some young super duper striker, you wouldn't put him as a left winger, would you? Except Juventus did that with Thierry Henry. Like, that is what some teams do. And it's fucked, because in doing so, you make people think, right, well, that player never was good enough anyway, so he couldn't hack it at the top level. And then you also don't address the problem in your team, which in this particular case is, if you're recruiting Borup, this is the reason why, you know what, I'm going to sound like I'm blowing my own horn here, because sometimes my analysis is just good, mate. Remember when ENCE had that final at the first major of 2019, when they made it past Navi and Team Liquid, and after that, you might remember this, I immediately said, it's inevitable they'll have to recruit Sonny at some point in time, because they'll need more firepower, and that if they do, the logical player to replace was Ariel. That was my take. Everyone else said I was wrong. It should be X7 because he's shit and look at his numbers. And also, Ariel's a good player. Like, look, he sometimes has good clips. And by the way, when he won that fucking Blast MVP, now it was like sacrilege that I was saying they replace Ariel. Right? If everyone looks back on Ents now, who the fuck would say I was wrong now?
Yeah.
That you'd want Alexi B and you'd want X7 and you just want to replace Ariel, wouldn't you? He's the player who went to shit in the last 6 months. Who doesn't do anything, who isn't a big fragger. Meanwhile, now Sonny's starting to get his game together again. Of course he's the player role for role you'd want to replace. That's exactly what you'd do. So, let me think. Where was I going on this one?
Kenya's coming back to number one, or the other teams not being able to be good.
Oh, yes, this is it. Yes, that's right. So the big problem is, in that scenario, if you're going to recruit those players, it's because you need a star player now. That's why you're recruiting a star. That's why I made that whole model years ago. So basically, here's the uncomfortable truth no one wants to know. Right? If Fallen's such a good AWPer, then why isn't he a contender for best AWPer in the world? Yeah. He uses the AWP all the time. I tell you why, because even Fallen himself would tell you he's not as good with the AWP now. Like, I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's motivation, lost the passion for the game, doesn't like the way the modern day games. So I don't know what it is. Like, it's hard to know. But all I can tell you is even he would tell you he's not as good an AWPer now. Yeah. So in that scenario, why is he the AWPer for a team that thinks they could ever be number one? I either don't believe you actually think you can be number one, or I think you're doing a terrible strategy. So here's the other one you're not going to want to hear. I'll tell you one reason right now why NIP will never be a top 5 team in CSGO. Because how could Forest be your best player? Go and look at the numbers. If your best player is like a 1.08 rating on HLTV, why the fuck could you be top 5?
Yeah.
So the problem is this. Fallen and Forest can keep being star players as long as they want. They can get the bag. They should. They should do the best for themselves. The point is they shouldn't be in teams that they are in right now. Like, Fallen, if he's going to be an AWPer, has to have a team like fucking Guardians got in Navi. Everyone else has to be so good that if he's just half decent with the AWP, they win the game. That's not at all what MIBR is set up like right now. NIP probably shouldn't even have Forest at this point in time, but they're just fucked for Swedish players. Mm-hmm. Forest should probably be playing on a team like... He should be on the new Complexity. There you go. He should be like a guy who's got a big name and he's going to have some games that are good. And then you're also hoping he just, like, yeah, some of the experience rubs off on the newer guys and they sort of get up to speed and then one day they overtake him. Like, the idea you're going to be one of the best in the world with these players is just silly, isn't it? And so, but the problem is none of these teams are going to let go of these players. And while they keep them, they're all in denial. They all act like, it's fucking Forest, man. It's like, I know it's fun to watch him play. I enjoy watching him go off. But I actually this is a genuine comment. I think it does real harm to the game when you pretend those players are still really good.
Yeah.
Like, I think it actually damages not just the game, but imagine being like one of their teammates who actually, like, some of the Forest teammates in NIP right now would be better at Forest's role than he is. Like, and yet they can't play those roles because Forest is in the team. But are they going to ever have an ultimatum and say, right, Tim, of course not. And they can't do it while we're all propping him up. So the point is, I want Forest to still be Forest. Just go and do it for a team where that's appropriate. It's not appropriate. I mean, it is now on NIP because they're fucked as an org, but you know what I mean? Like, if you ever thought NIP could be the best team in the world, well, it can't be with that kind of... Like, put it this way, here's the best example of all. You know the angle that no one talks about in Fnatic? Is everyone makes it... Like, this is the storyline of Fnatic, the laziest analysis ever. Right? Remember when Fnatic had Golden, and then they won those tournaments, and then they kicked him for no reason, and then they brought him back now, and they're really good again. It was Golden. I don't know if you guys were watching the games, but first of all, you've completely forgotten that, like, didn't fucking Lekro play in that team? Like, are we just pretending that move never happened? So, who was there instead of Lekro? Do you remember? Who's there now instead of Lekro? Brolan. He wasn't in the team at the time. No one remembers that. So, the key thing that's changed in Fnatic is Brolan's developing, because the guy was, 17, 16 last year? So it's actually on time for when you'd expect him with decent amount of lands under his belt, some hard games, some easy games. This is actually when you'd expect him to start taking those steps forwards in the same way as now you see Frozen doing in mouse sports. Sergey did at the early point of the year. Like, that's actually the real game changer to me. But what does everyone say? You can probably guess it, mate. I know from what form of content you'll be able to. What's the player that they're doing the Forest thing within Fnatic?
What? JDubs?
No. JDubs is pretty good right now, mate.
I don't know. I mean, it has to be Crimson.
No. He's really good, mate. Who's the player who gets praised all the time, but if I showed you his stats, like, and hid the comment, you'd think it was fucking Rush from Cloud9. It's Flusher. They're doing the same thing with Flusher. The genius of Flusher is that fucking quote. Like, if you give a man a reputation as an early riser, gets up early in the morning, he can sleep till noon for the rest of his life. Like, all Flusher has to do is every now and then pull out a sick clutch round or a weird flank, and people pretend he's doing it all the time like he used to. He can then have 11 kills in the game. Because that one round, I remember Flusher, he's playing sick now, isn't he? No, he isn't. Do you know what mathematics is? Like, you explain to me how someone can average 0.6 kills per round and be really sick and one of the best players in the world. Like, I'd love to know how it's done. It's never been done as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, that's. I mean, even when I was trying to answer the question, like, my brain immediately thought, it's probably not Flusher. He's amazing.
No, exactly.
But he's not. It's just...
No, and the point there is that's the same analysis. What people do is they go, right, it must be because Golden came back and Flusher and JW got their game together. JW got his game together, but the real reason why Fnatic's really good is because the player who now, if he continues, is going to be the best player is the new player.
Yeah.
That's the secret none of these other teams get. Like, that's why actually, I've said this many, many times, I actually really genuinely feel sorry for Fallen. Because I know that this guy gets it, actually. I know here's the problem, right? The Phelps scenario makes it seem like he doesn't get it because they ruined Phelps over and over again. But you have to understand, Phelps ruined himself, mate. Like, from the things I heard about his attitude, he was the sort of person, it's like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like, yeah. He was half in his own head on those teams. But I actually genuinely think that when Fallen tried to get K Serato and I think Yuri as well at one point in time, if he'd have gotten those players in like mid 2019, they would have turned it around and they'd be a top 5, top 6 team right now. They'd be really good. Yeah. They might not be the best. Like, that's, you never know if you can become the best again, but they'd be a good team because I think he would have put him in the key roles. And when Cold Zero left, he would have had the right squad, you know.
Yeah. But then, I mean, you still have Fallen will still always be more valuable to MIBR than any other team, even if it's for brand or even because he probably owns part of the.
Oh, he'll probably never leave, unfortunately. Yeah. Just for like, he's got too much business stuff going on. It just doesn't make sense, especially at this point in his career. Like one of the reasons, actually, I mean, he didn't choose to leave, but one of the reasons why actually I have a lot of respect for people like NBK is they're taking a massive risk going to like new orgs. You know, like as you saw, he already got cut instantly from Vitality. And then now he's in OG, that if that project fails, he'll be in the same position that, this is why one of these days, mate, I'm either going to make on the side a whole business as a scout, or I'm actually going to become, I've threatened it many times, but I'll do it in a few years when the salary's high enough. I'll just become a GM for a team. Yeah. Because like, think of the players think of the stock market analogy. I'm able to buy players like Carrigan, fucking in the past Shocks. I can buy these players for pennies when I know they're going to become worth dollars.
Yeah.
Like, everyone else bails on them and goes, yeah, Carrigan, he's shit, didn't he fuck FaZe up? It's like, all right, mate, well, you just leave him for me. You leave the auction room. Yeah, I'll take him for whatever that is. And then they go back to the top. Like, some of these players people don't get. So, NBK, if the OG does bad, I'd still potentially try him another project, but a lot of people won't. Like, you see in CS especially, people are mad ruthless with, like, recency bias. Like, if they think you were shit at the end, they think you're just shit forever now. And in fact, they all do the same logic of what I said about the Forgiven example. Like, he's shit now, he can never be good again. Like, I don't even think that's true for Shocks, mate. And at the moment, Shocks is not a very good player. Yeah. I think the whole thing with Shocks is he's also, like, trying to do a role that doesn't suit him, and maybe he shouldn't be on the best French team. Like, maybe he should be on a team like G2 if he wants to be the player that Shocks was of old. But, you know, there's a lot of complicated elements going on with that. And I don't claim to have the answers, certainly.
Yeah. What about North? I know you pushed it aside by the numbers thing. Maybe it's because it's too boring to talk about it again. But can North become something good again? Are they just stuck with these? Because all the names are. If you look at the names, you think, well, it's probably a good team, but they're not.
One of the problems they have in the Danish scene is they just won't fucking give up on people. Like, what people don't know is most of the players they kicked. Like, here's the real irony of fucking MSL's career, right? If people actually knew what Config and Magisk did in North, they would know why they were correct to kick those players. Now, when I say correct, if I was the GM, I would have brought in sports psychs and therapists, and I would even had their parents involved. Like, I would have gone to like real extreme lengths to try and keep them, because I knew that those guys one day in time could be like the fucking major MVPs and the best players in the world. Like, I knew it was possible. But in terms of like just being a day-to-day operations of like this person's like behaving totally unacceptably or has a bad attitude, they were right to kick them. But the problem is every fan thinks they're idiots to kick them. Yeah. Well, that's how extreme it has to be before they kick you in the Danish scene. So as a result, that Juggy guy has been stealing checks for like 2 years now. Like, remember, when he was actually good was like Katowice 2017, mate.
Yeah.
We're about to come up on Katowice 2020. What the fuck's going on? Like, this is ridiculous. But he's played all this time in North and fucking Heroic and Optic. How many checks is he going to get before someone figures out what I've told people for the last 5 years? There is no such thing as a support AWPer. That is just a bad AWPer that you're trying to prop up. So if you kick him, problem solved. Because the sick thing is this. The guy who has all the players that North needs is fucking Hunden. He gets them all. Yeah. So like what they should really do is they should have like North and make North a tier 1 team that only goes to tier 1 lands, and then have Hunden in a trick type team. I mean, what team's it called now? What did he get bought by? Mad Lions, there you go. And the concept would be they'll just never play in the same tournaments. So he'd go to the DreamHack Opens, but that would be to test the talent out. And then what happened is when he discovers a Borup, yeah. Now he comes in and he replaces a star player in North, and now you've got the firepower. Like, that's the fucking pipeline I want to see. Because the obvious move, I've said it on my numbers, is you get MSL immediately back. Like, he's the best in-game leader that's not on a team right now. He's fucking Danish. It just goes without saying. But what you need to do is, because MSL himself, his biggest flaw as an in-game leader is he sticks with what he thinks works, and he can be very stubborn in that sense. It's actually a problem Stanislaus had. I actually see a lot of parallels between the two of them. So you want to put MSL in, but then you want to kind of like give him the talents to work with. So, like, of the players they have now, you'd probably still stick with Kirby. Like, he's actually shown a little bit of an uptick in form. I think Gade's a bit played out. I kind of think that guy never made it. Cajun B's all right. If he's like our worst player, we're an all right team. You get in, like I say, a Borup, or you get in some other player from the rest of the scene. That's how you start to make a team in that squad.
Yeah.
And then another aspect is, like, I have to say, my one fear for North is they actually kind of got unlucky that Astralis got so good again. Because I actually genuinely believe if Astralis had lost to Team Liquid at the major and they hadn't suddenly started to become the best team again, they actually would have made a roster move by now. I think they would have kicked someone. I think Valde would be in the squad, essentially. Now, I don't know if that means it would be Dupree or Mega's kick. But someone, I think, it might even have been Zipnix, because he's been pretty shit the last few months, actually. They would have kicked someone and they would have brought someone in. Now, here's the thing. If you're MSL, you already had Megas in the past, so it fucking sucks that he's not available now. But if any player gets kicked out of Astralis, you're hoping they come to you next, right? You're next in line.
Yeah.
The big problem is this. I don't think you are next in line. That's the reason why Valde is in OG right now. I think actually it'd be a FaZe or someone who'd get them all. But Mouse Sports, maybe you get some. Or, I mean, no one wants to go to NA, but all the NA orgs would come calling. So the big problem if you're North is, there's not really any way to get like the big names. You have to find the up-and-coming talent if you're going to stay Danish.
Yeah. But there were, I mean...
Do you think it can be fixed?
Thing is, maybe that's not true anymore, but weren't they like paying the most, etc.? I mean, they're still linked to the club. They have.
I don't know how much they pay now, but they definitely had. Put it this way: when they became North, I think when they became North, they were like the highest paid team in the world, and then VP had a clause in their contracts that bumped them above whoever else was the highest. So I think they were the second highest within, which at the time they almost even justified it. They were pretty good at the time, you know.
Yeah. So that's why I'm. Yeah, a bit surprised that they can't get better.
I might look into that. I might find out if they still pay high or not, because that would be the interesting element, wouldn't it? Because if they have, but the big problem is this. Like I said before about putting together like an MIBR team or putting together this squad, you notice I don't just say, just go and buy Magus, because even if you had the money, he wouldn't join, would he? Like, one of the big problems in CS still at the moment is, it's like, if my analogy is like the fucking school disco, right? We all know if we all go on the dance floor, we're all going to have fun. No one's going to judge anyone. But everyone's too scared to be the first one on the dance floor on their own, aren't they? Everyone needs to feel a bit of Dutch courage before they'll go out there. Everyone's just going to judge. So the problem is, that's what CS pros are like. No one wants. This is the problem Jason Lake had. No one wants to be the first big name to sign, because then what if Jason Lake fucks the rest up and you'll end up with all the bad players?
Yeah.
So the big problem right now is, why would any of them want to go to North? So what you have to do essentially is, you can't be good enough that they already would join now, but you've got to get to a position, which MSL was starting to do an Optic. They didn't really have the time or the talent to do it, but you've got to get like just close enough that they think what Kirby thought when he went to North. What if I went, like, for example, here would be the move. Say Magisk had a really bad next 6 months and he gets kicked from Astralis. What you want is for Magisk to think, I've worked with MSL before, and he's gotten in North to be the 9th best team. If I joined and he gave me all the resources to be the carry like I always wanted to be in Astralis, I could be the best player in the world. That's what you want, which is what they did with Kirby. It just didn't work, sadly, because Kirby just wasn't a good enough player, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, and especially if it was MSL to be back, that would be a good...
I have no idea, by the way. That's just my move. Like, it's not actually a move I've heard about or anything like that. In fact, I have to say, I'm not normally the guy who necessarily has all the inside moves. What people don't realise is, a lot of the ones I get right, that's just my analysis of who should join the team. So just that the team, all the players agreed with me.
Yeah. In this case, it was more from if it happens,
just hypothetical.
It's a good.
It's just the most obvious one. Like, here's the one thing I will give you. I'll drop a little gem for you, which is, MSL has had, as far as I know, some big NA offers. I think he just doesn't want to play in NA. I think he wants to go back to Europe and just be in probably a Danish or European team. So,
yeah, I mean,
pretty common story there.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I mean, especially now that, if you look at League of Legends, there's so many Danes going over. Even now that Blamef wasn't exactly tier 1, but he went.
He had the potential to be.
So maybe there's more. As more go, they'll.
Because the problem is, like, the difference in League of Legends is this, right? If you stay in Europe in League of Legends, you stay in Europe, but you don't stay in your house. You go and live in a fucking shithole house in Germany, which is, by the way, a dog shit country. I don't know why anyone bigs up Germany. Like, as far as I can tell, you have to be German to do that. Or just completely brainwashed by the EU or something. So, like, I wouldn't want to live in Germany, mate. And I come from the UK. Like, it's not like the UK is that much better, but, like, I'd much rather live in other places. So, if I have to choose, right, if I have to go and live in Germany, and if you notice, in League of Legends, they're not all from the same country anyway, so there's no cultural overlap. Yeah. If I have to go and live in Germany, and nowadays, if you're in the top teams, you can get comparable money. But back then, you used to get, like, a fifth of the money. Yeah. Like, what would I rather do? Live in Berlin for a fifth of the money with a bunch of people I don't know and aren't from my country and are flaming me, or go live in NA, get paid 5 times more, play easier competition, live in a team house in California with slightly worse teammates who aren't flaming me as much. Like, well, that's fucking easy, isn't it? Like, I was actually amazed. I've said this on Listen Local. I have incredible respect for all those European players who said, I'll stay just to be more competitive in Europe. Like, if people knew how many times Forgiven, if he just jumped through a couple of hoops, would have been in NA. This guy could have made like 5 times more money in his career. It would be crazy how much more he could make. But he didn't, because every time, it paid off, didn't it? He made the top 4 at Worlds. That's what he always thought was possible if he stayed in Europe and went on the right team. So sadly, in CSGO, at the moment, you can get just as much money or slightly less money, but you get to live in your hometown, sleep in your bed, be with your girlfriend, your family, and then go to the events. So, like, I don't blame them. The problem is, I do personally think that unless MSL gets the North offer, I think it would have been worth gambling even a year in NA just to raise his status again if he'd have got the right team, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, but then, maybe he's just prefers to play with the Danes, and he has his system and so on. I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Like, I can't blame him on that. I'm not him, so I can't know what his comfort level is and all that shit, you know. Like that's one area where, as an outsider, you're just commenting on the guy you see in the server. You can't really know what the person's like at all. You know, you speculate on that. Like, I've definitely been wrong on some of those ones. Like, there's been certain players where, like, I can even tell you this probably because he doesn't even bloody play as a pro anymore, right? One of my most infamous and very rare real misses where I completely missed the mark was, if you ever go back to like 2015, whenever I used to do a video or talk about the concept of making another team that could be good from NA and taking other players out there, I always used to put that player Roker in there who used to play for actually Complexity once upon a time and fucking Echo Fox and all. Well, I can tell you from people who've been teammates of his, what I was seeing was real. He had like actually some pretty naughty aim. He had some like nice talent. But what I didn't know is this. I thought, right, get him, put him in a real team with a real IGL and I put players around him. And it's like, no, actually, if you do all that, he doesn't change. He just does the same shit. And so if he does the same shit, he's actually not going to improve as a player. He's not going to go in, and he didn't. He basically was like a flop. And all his teammates told me the same shit. They were like, yeah, I could be crazy in scrims, do really not stuff like individually, but actually he would just play like essentially for frags, and like that was just who he was as a player.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I still think, I still hope that they'll turn it around. I just think that there's just too many of these teams that I'm kind of hoping or have expectations for, and they can't all be better.
Put it this way, if you want players to go to NA, because I do, by the way, think that would actually be a big game changer in CS and would make the whole global scene better because the NA orgs have more money. Yeah. Like, as much as everyone wants to laugh at like Envy, like, Envy, their team's shit. It's like, mate, they have the resources to have a way better team than some of these European ones. Like, they could pay them way more as well. Mm-hmm. So, like, the key thing is they have to have players that justify that, though. What could change it is this upcoming NA League, the one that's been labelled as B-Site, if you've been reading any of DK's reports. Yeah. And I won't reveal any more, but put it this way. Let's just say I know a thing or two about that you might find out in the future. So all I'll tell you is this. That league, the part everyone's missing about DK's report is when we're going to have these 3 leagues next year, right? First of all, there aren't 3 leagues. There's the Blast Circuit, which is just the Blast Circuit, and they've got the teams they're partnered with, but people can qualify as well. Mm-hmm. And then that's just basically compete with the ESL Tour. And even then, they're separate events. You can go to all of them if you really want, if you're going to kill yourself. Yeah. The only real competition is ESL Pro League and B-Site. And that's because B-Site is essentially replacing ECS. So actually, I don't know where all this drama's come. Well, I do. It's ESL and other people in the industry who don't know what they're talking about and aren't going to be a part of it, spreading bullshit. Essentially, it's the same as what we had the year before. Yep. There's overlap. But that's the difference. ECS and EPL used to let you compete in both, but you saw even EPL was aggressive with how they scheduled their event right after ECS. They always were battling each other. It's just now you have to pick one of the leagues. Now, by the way, I love the idea that's a bad thing. After every fucking pro player for the last 2 years told me there should be only one league. They're unbelievable pro players. They are like the little fucking 10-year-old girl who wanted a pony, and then you get her a pony, it's the wrong fucking colour at her birthday. Like, that's who these pro players are like. They're unbelievable. They're the same little rats who cried about wanting that best-of-1 format with round robin, and then said it was shit when I told them it was shit. Like, they're just unbelievable. So essentially, the point I was going to make is this. The big difference is this. If you play an ESL Pro League, you just play in it, and then ESL makes sponsorship money, and then they share some of it with you. Now, if you saw in DK's report, there was a graph leaked of the rev share. Did you see this?
I saw the headline, but didn't see the details.
Basically, the EPL rev share starts slightly higher than the B-Site one in the first year, and then goes down and levels out really quick for the next 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Then the B-Site one starts slightly lower than ESL's first year, and then every year after that, I think it was year 2 onwards, it goes up, and it's almost like one of those like classic lines going from like low to high, or like just a diagonal line. And the idea, because it's just a team, essentially it's a league that is the teams. So who the fuck are the rev sharing? Just themselves, aren't they? So the point is this, ESL's model's obvious. They get you in to lock you in for the 4 or 5 years, and then you're going to initially sign because you get a little bit more money and you know EPL brand, and then they're just going to sell loads of ads, and if they make loads of money, they're just making most of that. Now, the concept with the other one, this is the part everyone missed, was that Astralis, as part of that report, apparently their buy-in to join this league, if you want to join, and you can qualify as well, but you don't get rev share, if you want to join the league, it's $2.2 million, it said. There's no buy-in for Blast Pro Series as far as I know. There's no buy-in for EPL. The reason there's the $2.2 million buy-in to be like a permanent member of this league, the B-Site League, is because the logic is when these teams in the future sell against the league and sell broadcast rights and get loads of sponsors through the door and build up the league, you're going to rev share in the future, if it's ever monetized, lots of money. It's like LCS and OWL, but less whack, basically. Like, it actually has a chance. Now, I don't know if it can succeed because, like, I mean, that's like trying to, like, that's like you having to predict something that hasn't happened yet. Like, no one invented the monetization system yet, so I can't say it'll definitely succeed. But it's got the best chance of all. So what you really need to hope for if you want CS to get way bigger in terms of, like imagine a world where we had 30 teams that could all legit compete to be top 10. That would be unbelievable. I know an idiot would be like, but we do that. No, we don't. We only have that because the teams at the bottom of the top 10 aren't good enough at the moment. Like, if you really want that, you want the league in NA to take over. Because if that league does as well as it can, and the other leagues exist, then that's when there will be now one league. It'll be the people with the rev share teams in the B-Site League that will be able to pay more than anyone else. So that's the part that no one gets. You know, everyone saw the teams that were rumoured and they were like, most of these teams, except for Astralis, aren't good though. They're all just like nobody teams, or they're like teams that are got shit lineups at the moment. It's like, yeah, they do right now. But the point is, if the league aspect takes off, in the future, it will literally become in their interests to just sign the best European players for more money. Like, they'll go to these players, and instead of joining G2, you'll join their team for way more money. And at that point in time, there's also the difference, is it's a very different decision to make if you're going for 3 times the money to an NA team. At the moment, you might only be going for like 10% more money. Yeah. And that's easy. I can tell you from my own career, I'll easily turn down 10% for all the other things I enjoy in life. You know, who the fuck wouldn't?
Yeah. I mean, so...
That was a fucking download and a half there, wasn't it? Because we haven't done a by the numbers about it, mate. There's a lot of gems in there. Luckily, no one watches these fucking things anyway, so it doesn't really matter, does it? I'll tell you what, though. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see where I did a poll on Patreon asking the patrons themselves if I should make these things like just for patrons only to listen to?
No, I didn't see the poll. What did it say?
Dude, this is how you know I have actually the coolest fans out of anyone.
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority said no, keep it free for everyone to watch.
Yeah, of course.
Even though they would just still get it themselves. Because what I was thinking was, since I do drop like straight gems in these, I could even drop more if I made it private, you know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, fair enough. I think that's cool that they were open to keeping it like that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't vote.
No.
I didn't vote, but I'll my intuition is obviously to have public, even though, there are some things here that would probably be riskier to say on, you know.
I mean, here's the thing. I'll never really say anything I can't say. It's just that, first of all, like, one of the positives actually is that shit like this never even goes on Reddit. Like, idiots are too dumb to think there's anything in there. Like, they all go, you're just talking to bloody patrons. Why would I listen to that? It's like, did you miss the part where they could actually have really interesting topics that no one else has even brought up before, and they can ask me literally any of them and I answer them? Like, to me, that's straight fire content. Like, I wouldn't necessarily watch them all. Like, if I started watching one I didn't care about League of Legends, I'd obviously skip past that part. But people don't know some of the sort of minor things I can actually reveal on this show that I wouldn't on By the Numbers. Sometimes just out of responsibility. Like we sometimes speculate about things on By the Numbers, but there's certain things you just don't want to say in that public a setting, you know. This is like semi-informal.
Yeah. I mean, even your Patreon AMAs have way more. That could be like 10 videos. Like each
of course, yeah.
Almost be a video.
That's why, if you notice, I do tend to say, like, this question probably should be a video, because that just means, like, I can't really go, like, super ham on this one, mate. Like, I can't make, like, 40-minute answer for this. So, for those ones, hopefully, I just remember to make a video of them eventually.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to think about that for this 2020 now. I want to get someone, in fact, maybe someone's listening right now who could do this. I want to get someone who can work for me. Like, I'll pay them. I'm not going to pay loads, obviously, if you hear what I'm going to say we're going to do. But it needs to be someone who already watches a lot of my content. Mm-hmm. And I want someone who can just, no joke, anytime I say, I should probably make a video about that, just write it down and send it to me in an email. I'll pay them a small fee to do it. That's why ideally it should be someone who already watches loads of it anyway, and it would just be a way for them to get a cool little start in the industry or something. Yeah. Because that would actually be of value to me, because people don't realise I literally don't have the time to go back and listen to a 3-hour podcast, even if I'm skipping through and find where I said that shit. Like, I just don't have the time. Like, my productivity, I've put that time elsewhere, unfortunately. Yeah. But there's so many times I forget that I said a topic like that, or I think I'm going to remember later, but then I don't the next day or whatever. There's just too much shit going on, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. A couple of times I've got it, but it's like whatever. Or even
it's just frustrating, because I always remember when I then say it again, like, I must do a video. Like the most obvious one ever, because I've referenced it so many fucking times, but I've never made the content on it. You're going to know it when I say it. Is the one that's about the average length of each lineup in CSGO, and the fact that it's roughly 9 months before you make a roster move. Like, I've said that so often, everyone else has even started to copy what I'm saying. Even though, actually, if I'd have done that video when I thought it up like 4 years ago, that would be revolutionary shit. Because think about it, right? To this day, every pro player in every pro team lies to himself that he's going to be in that team for 10 years if things go well. Even though history and the facts tell you that most players will like move on within 2 years, say, and that every team will have a roster move within a year. It's actually amazing that the Astralis team hasn't at this point in time. Like they'll be getting close, by the way, with that lineup now, already to being like one of the teams with the greatest tenure ever. Like it'll obviously just be like fucking VP, and then I mean we're ignoring the Vanguard or Vegas Squadron. I think it was the one that people used to name. Like that doesn't count if you were like we're stuck together when we were nobody. It's like that's like singing into a hairbrush when you're two. Like doesn't count. You haven't been singing for 20 years, mate. You know, so like that's actually very rare. That's why I say they were due for a roster move, even though no one will get that.
Yeah. No, but that's just human nature. I mean, there was a study that I found it very interesting, which is if you ask people, okay, what happened in your last 10 years of your life? It's like this changed, everything changed, I couldn't predict it. Okay, how's the next 10 years going to be? Yep, same job, same life, same everything. And it's like people just can't, in their minds, predict that the future will change, even if the last 10 years were crazy.
If you want to tie this in, that's the same phenomenon that's coming up with these players, where first of all, if you shit, they think, well, just take that graph and plot it. Look, he's just shit forever, isn't he? Like they can't ever see how you could turn the corner, even though the great players turn the corner like almost routinely. Yeah. Like it's all, like that thing I said before about the whole stock market approach. That's one of the reasons, by the way, why I literally quit that episode of Listen Loco and just stopped doing the show forever. Because I realised, wait a minute, if at the end of 2019, both these guys are going to sit there with a straight face and tell me like Froggen's an average mid laner in the LCS, what am I doing? I'm wasting my time with these discussions. Like, they're just not even being honest. Like, they've decided beforehand they're never going to ever acknowledge that no matter what happens. And that they'll just use some weird angle. Like, Loco's angle, that the reason I literally quit the show, Loco's angle was that actually Haunter carries Froggen. Like, I'm not saying that Haunter's a bad player. I think he was a pretty good second best player on the team. And together, the two of them pretty much hard carried that team. But the idea that, like, he was carrying, like, and by the way, that might be even an angle where, obviously, it's the whole TSM bias of like Loco just used to love TSM, etc. But like, that's so whack, dude. Yeah. Like what I realized in that moment was, do I want to just have the same conversation 700 times and at the end someone pretend we never had it once? Like, this is just a waste of my life. Like, this isn't even fun at that point in time. So it's just crazy to me how many times people act as though these players, the really good ones, can never turn around again. But more importantly, tie it in again. That's why they won't go and take a risk on a lesser squad or go to NA. Because in their mind, if they go and like, I have to say, Cloud9's ruined it for everyone, by the way. Because when you got Flusher and Kiyashima and all these players to come and join that team, you needed it to be good because then we'd have so many more players willing to go. Yeah. But after everyone saw like Cloud9 Prison, where you were just going to blasts and like winning one best of one and then drawing one and losing the other two 16-13 and go, well, maybe next time they win two. Like when you saw that, who the fuck would go after that? Like, you think you're going to be trapped in that prison for a whole year of your career, which you shouldn't be. Like, the sad thing I told you is, and said on By the Numbers many times, is Jason Lake actually did all the right moves as far as I can tell. Like, if he'd have gotten maybe one other person to sign earlier, he would have actually had, I mean, Juggernaut's a ridiculous term anyway, but he would have had a way better team than people would expect. Like, he would have had basically like the team OG has now. It would be something comparable to that.
Yeah. I mean, even Cloud9, obviously it's a joke now, but I think there was an article or something saying that Jack said they spent like $1 million or something to get the players last year or something. It's just, Jesus Christ.
Because the buyouts are crazy now, mate.
Yeah.
Like, that makes perfect sense. Think how many big name players he signed.
Yeah,
they were all coming from buyouts.
They never went anywhere, so it just sounds like poor guy almost. Like, he tried, and I was like, I'm not trying anymore.
And I'll even say one element is another gem. One element why I also don't entirely blame him. I do for some of it, because it's the sort of thing where, like, some of them he never even asked me about. So it's like, if you don't ask me and then you fuck it up and it's a move I would have said no to, well, you know what? Enjoy lying in the fucking bed you made. What do you want me to do? Why am I going to feel bad? Like, you know? Yeah. So what I will say is this, though. Because one of the problems Jack had in his teams, this is why, if you notice in League of Legends, everyone gives all the credit for the League of Legends team now, not to Jack, they give it all to reaper, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's true. What reaper did was he managed to get Jack to believe that he's the one who should make the big decisions over the players. Hence why reaper was allowed to bench Jensen, a player that, like, logically, if the players run the team, you can never bench Jensen. Like, he's the top of the pecking order. But reaper got to do it. And because it semi-worked, reaper now has that power. If you notice, the biggest problem in all the Cloud9 teams across all the games was they always let the players decide the team for too long, and therefore players just stick with comfort and they stick with the people they like and they won't take big risks and they won't bring in a player who is a bit of an arsehole but could be the next great player. Like they'll never bring in a Dardoch type player. They'll be like, fuck that guy. They'll just stick with whoever they've got, Lemonation or some fucker like that who's like mad washed up. So the big problem is in Cloud9 CSGO, he let the players do that for a long time. Like I've told the story before many times publicly. I literally had it arranged that Hundin and Valde would have joined that team and that it would have been a way to make the team international and turn it all around. And instead, it didn't happen because he trusted the players. And as a result, they kept Shroud and they kept Skadoodle. And then eventually they made a roster move and they got lucky and they won a major. And unfortunately, winning that major probably makes them think it was all worthwhile. But I'll always say it like this. Like, I can't promise the team I was put together would win a major, but they would have a better chance of being like a team that could win many tournaments, put it that way, whereas they won one.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a one-off. So the big problem is this. I feel like what he did was a classic move. I mean, put it this way. I don't even have to say women do this. All people do this as far as I can tell with sexual partners in relationships. Yeah. What you do is you have one type of person. I'll make a very, very simplistic one. Now I have a very boring, safe girlfriend she's very sensible and she understands like the way a mortgage works. And you know what? She's really cool to talk about with books too. And yeah, you know what? There's some passion there, but she doesn't like to go out clubbing at all. She doesn't like to fuck around and do jokes and stuff like that. Like, you know, she's a bit boring that way. So because that's the one thing you don't have, the second you get out of the relationship with that girl, that's the one thing you over prioritize. You know, I'm sure you know the principle. Like, you go for the girl who's crazy and she wants to go to the nightclubs all the time. But you know what? It's going to get really annoying with that girl when it's fucking Sunday lunchtime and you're hungover and she's been really annoying and she doesn't want to, and she doesn't want to go out and she's just on her phone the whole. Like, that's when you're going to be like, oh fuck, I actually had something I enjoyed. It's not that one or the other's better. It's that you've swung too wildly from one to the other. So basically, I think he went from like trust the players know best to like, right, now that they've all betrayed me, now let me do what Thorin said. Let me just buy all these European players, whack them together. Fuck this whole squad approach. Like, I'll become like a mini FaZe. Yeah. And the problem is, like, he also did get incredibly unlucky with that fucking lineup. Like, man alive, though. Shit with Golden and then with Flosher and then Kiyashima being an arsehole. Like, you can't predict some of this stuff, mate. Yeah. Especially not all at once. Yeah. Give me a break.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like, getting Stico, specifically, I don't mind Stico, just Stico with that lineup is just like, what are you doing now?
That was a waste of time, of course. Yeah. Well, mate, the one that really kills me, I'll tell you another great example of a player who like has got a fucking reputation that needs to be killed if anyone wants to help him or anyone in the CS scene. It's fucking Mixwell. Why are we still pretending this guy's amazing because he was good in 2016? It is going to be 2020 in 2 days. We've added 4 to the end number of the year since he was a top player. And even then, I don't know if you remember this far back, but do you remember what the narrative with Mixwell was the entire time he was in Optic in NA? Do you remember the narrative that was around him as a person?
No, I don't remember.
He wanted to go back to Europe the whole time. The only reason he didn't is because they got really good. Oh, yeah. And so he was willing to stick it out. So why the fuck are you signing this guy to NA teams? The only reason he came back now is because in Europe, no one gave a fuck anymore and no one in FaZe was going to ask Mixwell to join. So as a result, now NA became a reasonable offer again in the short term. Yeah. So, but like, that's a good example of like, why are you even wasting your time on a move like that? Like that's not going to turn it around.
Yeah. And especially when they're doing in Overwatch, they like sold those 2 very good players to, I guess, I don't know if it's money balling or it's saving money or whatever it is.
It's saving money, basically.
Yeah. So it's not like Cloud9 is now trying to become top 1 again. So
put it this way, their move that they did in Overwatch is basically like selling Astralis and then buying Mad Lions. Like if you do that, you're telling people I don't care about being number 1.
Yeah. Yeah, so Cloud9 is a bit weird. I mean, they're not even...
But I can't blame them. I mean, like, listen, some of this, by the way, for people who are listening, like, is sort of referring back to a conversation we had before we started the chat. Like, I always have to reference that because, like, I notice Moses does that. He sometimes goes, it's like we were saying earlier. It's like, Moses, we weren't saying it earlier. This didn't exist. Like, what are you talking about? Like, but I have to just let him say the shit, you know? So I will say, like, I do think generally Cloud9, the problem is from a business angle, they're totally correct. Like, all you should do at this point, and put it this way, You know that thing that Fnatic and Mouse were saying on Twitter the other day when they were getting all butthurt about not being in the Blast League? Like, but we've been bloody elite in CS for years. It's like, what the fuck does that have to do with business in 2020? Like, why does you having the best CSGO team in fucking 2015 or a really good CS 1.6 team in 2010, how does that have anything to do with business in 2020? It doesn't, does it? So actually, right now, I'll tell you another little secret no one wants to hear. All these championships that we're playing for right now matter to me, but they don't matter to history at all. And I mean in terms of like business. They matter to history and esports history.
Yeah.
But in terms of like what's going to happen in 2025, these championships can't help you there. They don't do anything to your valuation. They do nothing whatsoever. So right now, the actual smartest move is get into every franchised league and just spend as little as possible while not getting relegated or fined. That would be the best move to do. And then if they never work out as leagues, cool, you wasted way less money, had to take way less investment. If they make it as leagues, now you start pumping the money in when the monetization comes. Yeah. You survive, and then at that point in time, you do it. Like right now, all you should do is tread water. Like it's actually, like again, to tie it into the Europeans in League of Legends stain, I have mad respect for Team Liquid that they go for broke constantly. But there's a reason why the term is going for broke. Guess what? They might win a whole bunch of championships in CS and League of Legends and other games, and they might actually not exist in terms of their current ownership or at all in 5 years. That's not implausible, believe it or not.
I do agree that, like, in a general sense, I do believe that's the best strategy. But just thinking back that, like...
It's just whack, though, isn't it?
A year ago, if you counted flares in the subreddit, like, 3 years ago, it was NIP the most and then Cloud9 second. It was like, and now... who is a fan of Cloud9? Like they can't have fans. They don't have a team, or they have a couple of players. So it just seems like a waste of a great starting space.
Yeah, but the problem with that is, like, again, those are all fans. It's like fucking Twitch viewers, isn't it, mate? Like,
yeah, it's like post-match.
No, they're not paying anything. They're just a fan, true. Like True. So the big problem is like that. This is actually the ultimate area that's so difficult in esports. Is when I'm being a pundit, I almost should literally have two hats next to me. And one says business analyst and the other one says CS analyst. And what I should do is, as I'm talking, put a hat on and go CS analyst. But it's actually whack as fuck. Like, if you're going to be in CS, go for it all. Try and be the best. Try and have the best team. Because isn't that why we're in esports? To be the best, to be great. Then I take that hat off, put on the business hat on. Well, it's actually stupid to be the best now. Like, winning a major now does nothing for you. So what it did to Cloud9, isn't even an attractive location right now. Spend the minimum you can, survive as long as you can, wait till it comes money. Oh, he's taking that off again. Yeah, but what would the point in just surviving be? Like, what? It's just about money. I can go make money on the stock market. I'd have to move between the two constantly. So unfortunately, esports itself is kind of schizophrenic at the moment,
Yeah.
Although I guess actually famously schizophrenic's like not the actual correct term. It would be like whatever. Yeah. Whatever multiple personality disorder or whatever the fuck. It's the one where people always confuse, right?
Yeah. Speaking of NARX,
I should probably do a little skit like that, shouldn't I? Should you get some... that's another thing I need to do, by the way. I'm going to do it. I need to get someone who could, like, make very simple, like, shitty South Park type animations, but for, like, my little skits like that. Like, that would be a straight fire skit.
That as well. But also the intros. You did one with the bird recently, and obviously before when you were doing one for every video. Those were great, and yeah.
I'm going to ramp those up, don't worry. Believe it or not, the only reason I haven't ramped them up at the moment is the current set of sponsors I'm working with don't want as many. They only want a couple.
Yeah.
So if I can get something else lined up where it makes sense financially, I might just start adding those in again. Because the other thing is, most of those ones where I was just sat there on my PC, guess what? I've just got it like that, mate. I can just think that up in 5 seconds before I go live. But if I actually put any amount of time into it, like I did with the bird one or whatever, like I could actually make them pretty funny. Like I could do all sorts of creative shit out and about with some of the intros, couldn't I?
Yeah.
There's a lot more room you could do with stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I wanted to, since you mentioned Cloud9, I guess the opposite would be Evil Genesis, which now just bought this team for a lot of millions. Or more than one.
Not actually that I'm much.
Yeah, sorry, not a lot
in the current climate, but yeah, in real term, yeah, $3 million is always $3 million, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
To you, me, it's a lot of money, mate.
Yeah. So what do you think of this team? I mean, it was obviously probably the best team you could ever get like this.
Sure.
A full team available. But is this a team that will continue and be big in the future, or do you think this could just be?
Put it this way. If you want to refer back to what I was saying about, like, I get that fans think that the B-Side League has some whack teams in it. I think it has some whack teams in it. And by the way, I'll tell those fucking teams that directly, that they're fucking whack and that they should listen to me. But okay, what I'll say is this. Those teams, when you consider how much it costs to even get bad teams now, I mean, listen, there actually was a bidding war for the EG lineup, but there should have been everyone involved. Like, all of these orgs that wanted to come into CS, the two best teams you could have bought at the time on the market that were available was Evil Geniuses and then what is now 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Like, those are two teams that are both clearly top 10, in case of EG, top 5. They look like they have consistency to stay there, and there's maybe even some slight upside that they can get even better. Or you can put one extra player on and they might even have a chance to go even higher. Yeah. So both of them were great teams that, like, a lot of teams now, it's like fucking musical chairs. They're like, oh, but there's no seats left. It's like, yeah, no shit, Professor. Like, you didn't sit down fast enough. Like, that's the game. Like, you guys were dicking around while the other people sat down in the good chairs. So the big problem, I think, in this scenario with EG is they're going to have to be really brutal if they want to improve. Because there's two factors at play as far as I know. That whole aspect of like, oh, burnout, all the rest of it's like everyone gets burned out. Yeah. But when Astralis gets burned out, they fucking win a tournament without losing a map. So burnout can't be the be-all end-all. That's a shit excuse. Almost everyone in CS, it's like people do with health issues. They don't tell you, oh, you know, I actually sit in a really bad posture when I work on my PC and then I crane my neck a lot. So that causes a symptom, which is that I have a lower bad back. What they say is I have a bad back. Yeah. And what they do is try to get medicine or ointment for the bad back and keep sitting like that at the fucking PC suit. That's what people do in terms of like eSports. Like they go, oh, I'm burned out. No, you aren't. The question is, why are you in a situation where when you get even mildly burned out, it makes you bad at the game? That's an interesting question. And if you can find answers to that, which there are answers, you can do things like Astralis has done. You can still be a great team in the game. So I think one of their problems is their IGL. I mean, if you've watched any of my content about Stanislaw, I always say the same thing. He has certain areas as an IGL, he's very, very good. He has certain areas he is ludicrously deficient in terms of leadership aspects, below the level of like players who aren't even the main leader of their team. Like someone like NBK has more leadership skills than Stanislaw. I'm talking about as a man. Yeah. Like, you know, like knowing how to deal with people and personalities and who to push and who to pull and all that shit. Like Stanislaw doesn't have any of that. So the big problem is Stanislaw, like MSL, they just go in the server and call strats. That's their world, and that's all their world will ever be, as far as I can tell, from their own self-imposed limitations. So you need someone else to do it. And if you know the coach that they have in EG, again, similar story. He has really great strengths. He even has some strengths in terms of some demo viewing things. I actually think he's ahead of some people in the game that are much more tenured coaches. But he's not a guy who has strong leadership qualities and can work with players. So, first of all, they're a team. They're the most obvious team I've ever seen that badly need a really good sports psych to work with them. Yep. But then even beyond that, they need someone in the GM position. And I don't know who the fuck the GM is in Evil Geniuses, because Evil Geniuses is nobody's. They're not Evil Geniuses. They're none of the people from that org that you're all remembering. So they need someone who can make harsh cuts. Because in this team right now, like, first things first, you've probably got to cut at least one player. Like, I even think if you take these 5 players, I don't think they'll ever be as good as they were a few months ago again. They could still be, like, they could be 90% of it, but that still wouldn't make you number 1. So if you've got this team, why not shoot for number 1? So one of the big problems I see in the team is the most obvious player stats-wise that you would cut tomorrow is Tarek. Like, his stats are terrible. He has terrible games. But the problem is, from the things I know within the team, supposedly he has the most unselfish attitude and he will literally just fill any spot on any map that people need him to fill. Yeah. So all of a sudden, now it's not as easy to instantly cut him. Because then the question becomes, is there another player who could do some of that and therefore Tarek could open his game up more because he's clearly a skilled player? Then you've got to look like Breeze was really bad the last few months, but he actually came alive at Epicenter, and then when he comes alive, he's their best player. So the real problem is this. The only players you have to keep in that team is probably Stanislaw, Breeze, and Cirque. The other two, I could be persuaded if I had the right player available. So here's the difference, right? This is where I'll tie it all back in, because I'm just that fucking good at keeping threads going. Whereas MSL and North are shit out of luck if Astralis lose a player. Anyone gets kicked out of Team Liquid, pop them in Evil Geniuses tomorrow, please. Yeah. I don't care who it is. Like, for example, I would say the player who's the most underwhelming in Team Liquid right now isn't even Stewie2K, it's actually Twists. Because what's mad is his deaths are insanely low, but in the last few months, it feels like he never has impact. Like, he'll have one map out of 10, it feels like, where he goes crazy. The other maps, he's just not there. And I haven't watched his demos enough yet that I can say, like, specifically what it is. But that screams to me wrong role right now, or wrong role for this team. So if you kicked him out, now, again, I don't think that would happen. I think they actually all think he's super sick in the team, that he wouldn't be the player to leave. I think it would be some of the others. But if he ever got kicked, if I'm EG, tomorrow I'm kicking Ethan and getting him.
Yeah.
Tomorrow. Like, I don't give a fuck. Even though Ethan, by the way, has actually been improved the last few months. Because I'll tie it back into the Ents argument. You know what? Right now, the best players in EG go in this order. Cirque, Ethan, Breeze. But here's the difference. If Breeze gets back to the best, he's way better than Ethan is right now. So the problem I have with that is I'm willing to kick the Aerial who's doing a 7 out of 10 game if I think in the long run I can get a 9 out of 10 player.
Yeah.
And if you notice, I always try to consider role balance. Like, I think role balance is a really, really important, I would almost say, like, amplifier of a team.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said it a million times over. That's one of the reasons I will always fuck with the game of Taco. If you individually go and put Taco on fucking Fury, and let's see how he does on that team. I bet it'd be garbage. Yeah. But you put him on Team Liquid, he used to look actually pretty solid in his role, didn't he?
Yeah,
he never really used to let the team down. I mean, he wasn't a good fighter, but you know, hey, it's like, put it this way, you would almost be like constantly impressed. Like, how is he doing this against like some of the best teams? Like, this is pretty legit, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked, the NRG lineup when it was coming up. But now it does feel a bit like, did they hit the ceiling? Is this burnout thing? Did they, will they just get better in 2020 after the short?
Problem is, even at their peak, they clearly did still have some issues. So, like, they were never going to. Here's the difference: when Astralis and Team Liquid get to the top, they just stay there for like 6 months. NRG was always going to be more like win a tournament, come 5th, win a tournament, come 4th. Like, they shouldn't be coming like 13th. That goes without saying, but. They were always going to be a bit streaky. I mean, that's the reason I made that video on them. Like, if you look at some of the things they did and the style they played, I mean, this is the reason I always give that analogy about FaZe Clan. That my whole reason why I didn't think FaZe Clan would get an era and be the best team ever is because if they did, almost everything I know about Counter-Strike and has developed in terms of philosophy must be wrong. And guess what? It wasn't. I'm actually, in a sad way, I'm happy to say it wasn't.
It's actually interesting, because I think one of your points was that IMAPet and Stanislaw were able to like counter-strat the map here and there, but if they're the number one, it's like everyone else is doing it to them as well, so it's way harder to
you don't get the edge on that. No, exactly. Like, the big problem is that is most effective. Like when he was in CLG, if you're like the 15th best team in the world, because no one's fucking looking at you. They've literally got like 9 other teams just at this tournament they're looking at in case they play them. Yeah. So at that point in time, they're putting minimal effort into scouting you. You're putting all your effort into scouting them. Like, that's exactly where you get a mad advantage. That's one of the reasons why. I'll tell you a team right now to keep your eye out for next year is it isn't, sadly. I was about to say Tai Lu, right? But I've realised Ben Tet's just left. So actually, probably that's just going to ruin exactly what I just said. Imagine Tai Lu had kept Ben Tet, right? If he could have stayed. Yeah. The reason why it would have been interesting was when they had that run where, like, put it this way, they could have won that CSGO Asia Championship. They had Mousesports, that map point on the second map when they were 1 map up in the semi-finals. Like, they could have won that whole tournament. And that team right there looked like a team that would, first of all, be top 10 and actually could maybe even do more than that. Like, maybe could have tournaments where they could make semis at a big tournament. And the reason why they looked like that, supposedly, is because they brought in this guy who used to be an old 1.6 player at the end called Kings or something like that. And he's now the coach of their team. And supposedly he'd brought in like a little bit more structure, or maybe he was like helping them with tactics or something. Because I always thought Chinese, I mean, there's not enough Koreans to do it, so you ignore them for now. But Chinese players would be the ultimate ones to, in theory, be the really good upset teams, but more consistently than they are now. Because they have got a whole bunch of players that have really nice aim or skills, but at the moment they play brain dead and they don't put much time into learning the game, and they don't understand certain even concepts within the game. Like, you can tell some of the Tai Lu players don't understand certain like concepts that, like, I've said in videos, for example, because there is no one saying in the videos. There's no one in their scene does that. No one, they don't know, they can't interpret what the other players are doing against them. So if you could level them up on those angles, and then you had a coach who, because they come in as the 13th best team in the tournament every time, no one's paying attention, but you're scouting everyone else, you could have a whole bunch of tournaments where you can go on a pretty nice run.
Yeah. I do feel that isn't here. I don't remember the specific players, but at least ZywOo, the team, that's true for like 3 years or something now. No,
because they've been stuck in a rut for a long time now. Yeah,
but always, once every 3 months an upset, and you think, okay, oh, this team could do stuff. And I think Richard Lewis was famously trying to prop them up, and obviously they didn't go that far. Or at least as an upset team, you'd expect them to at some point become good, but maybe it's this new guy would make a difference. But again, yeah, without Bentat, he was amazing.
They were kind of like G2 is now. Like when they go sick, the map looks so good. You're like, holy fuck, this is fun. And then you watch like the next 5 games, and you're like, actually, I'm not a fan of this team.
Yeah. You watch them play another Chinese random team. And yeah, no. Yeah, actually, I was surprised with something you said, which is that the next, I mean, it is true that the next best team that was available was the Australians that are now 100 Thieves. But do you think that's actually a top 10 team that's safe in the top 10? Because, I mean, I'm not an expert, but they don't seem to me like that they have that big of a potential. But
their problem is this: they have almost no potential, mate.
Yeah.
Like, as in, what they're doing right now looks to me like most of the players are maxed out.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, they're pretty consistent. They do that tournament to tournament to tournament. So if they're playing Astralis, yeah, I'm not going to pick them to beat Astralis, but tell you what, mate, they can get the fucking FaZe Clans of the world, EG, Fnatic. They can get a lot of these teams if they get them on the right day. So, like, I do think they can be a consistent top 10 team. It's just the difference is where they are in the top 10 now is way more realistic. Like, to be like the 6th best team, that's actually realistic. Like, they could do that. Now, certainly, the problem with that and the scary thing is, if any player drops off a cliff, yeah, you're fucked. Like, you're going to be like the 13th best team. That's why the analogy I would give, this is another one of those areas, like, I certainly don't think I'm like the ultimate expert. In fact, I used to have a brilliant way of describing it a few years back, where I used to say, like, I would do classic Thorian style. So I lead with the controversial statement, and then I make the statement that actually makes it totally reasonable and makes a lot of sense. So I used to say, I know more about Counter-Strike than anyone who ever lived. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean I know everything that everyone who lived and what Counter-Strike knows. You see the distinction there?
Yeah.
Like, they might have knowledge in areas I don't. Like, obviously certain players do in a way I never will. But in terms of, like, the breadth of the knowledge that I've had and the amount of, like, different concepts I've thought up, and I've got loads of working theories and models that other people haven't even got anything for in that domain. Well, notice how many times I'm able to take players and contrast them and almost make like a type of a player or team. And then when I find them and I find connections, you then see like they mirror each other through their careers. Mm-hmm. So examples would be, I've often contrasted players like Elige and Magisk. Or in the modern day, this is what I'm going to tie in now. When ENCE broke out, at the same time the Renegades team broke out. They made top 8, you remember, but they lost MIBR. Same major. I told people, watch these two. They're the same teams. Like they've got they're both maxed out in terms of the skill. They've got a nice role balance. They play tactical Counter-Strike. They both have a wide map pool, but not the deepest map pool. They've only got a couple they're really good on. And funnily enough for both of them, if they played like the opponent on DOS 2 that was just more skilled, they would just lose the series. Like they both had similar start. The difference is, cause ENCE hit that nice little summer run, people thought they were just two different teams. And the big problem is, do you remember why Renegades didn't make the summer run?
No.
They had all the visa problems with Gratisfaction. Yeah. So what happened was he first of all wasn't at EPL, and then when he did come to the summer tournaments, they had no time to practice with him. So what it did was it made it look like I was wrong. I was actually right. They just didn't have all that ENCE had. So the thing is, to me, they as a team are like what ENCE was before the Alexi B move. Like, I even made that article. I don't know if you remember this. When ENCE was ranked like number 3 in the world, I made an article called Too Hard for ENCE. And I explained that there's no way, even if they kept the lineup, that they'd be able to hold on to that. And that realistically, they're probably going to become, like, I think I said, the 6th or 7th best team in the world. Because they're maxed out. And actually, they're maxed out at a time when, as you've seen now, there was a whole bunch of other teams that were one piece away from challenging them or being better than them.
Yeah.
So the big problem is, I know what you mean. Like, the difference is, 100 Thieves is a team that you pay to be the 6th best team. But can they be the 3rd best team? Not with this lineup. Like, that's just silly, you know. Like again, if I was in the team, I wouldn't believe that. I'd be working to improve the players, but I'm not in the team, so I can't rely on them. I've just got to go what I see now.
Yeah, and
I think they're a cool team to watch. Though. I really enjoy watching them play Counter-Strike. Actually,
Yeah. So yeah, obviously I agree with that. It was more the point of were they actually close to Evil Geniuses in terms of pecking order of teams to buy?
No.
They're
Like they're a step below.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem is though, like you look at the top 10 right now, most of those teams still need a roster move if they really want to challenge and be better than some of the teams I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And if you notice now, roster moves cost a lot of money because everyone's under contract.
Yeah. But I feel like FaZe is actually one we haven't touched yet. Like,
let's do that as the last one then.
Yeah, let's. I mean, we discuss this almost every call because
yeah, sure.
For me, it's just amazing how Nico, and now especially with coldzera, is just in a team and even Olofmeister. But I mean, is a bit, his prime has passed a bit. Yeah, how is it possible? Like, what's the way forward for them? And do you think your opinion changed, or is it still? I mean, let's continue and see if Nico and coldzera can do anything, but otherwise.
Oh no! Like you have to understand. Like, listen, you can even go check by the numbers. I've said it many times. I even said before they joined, like, it doesn't matter if coldzera joins. Like, that's not going to fix the fundamental systemic problems in both FaZe Clan and Nico's brain.
Yeah.
So as a result, like, you could go and put Simple on that team as well. You could put fucking Device on the team as well. Like, they won't be the number one team. Like, what's great is they'll be a worse version of the old FaZe Clan. Like, because they kind of had those players at the time, right? They had Simple, but, they had extremely good players. Like, the sad thing is, what's brilliant is, and this is another prediction I had about this team will be the humbling of coldzera. coldzera is about to learn what his teammates did for him, and he is going to desperately want to go to another team like that, or he's not going to care about Counter-Strike, he's only going to play for money and just work out in the gym and look buff on Instagram. Yeah. Those are the two options. Because the problem is, I'll give credit to Nico. I get why he doesn't ever learn his lesson. Because he's always a fucking sick player. He's still a sick player now. Like, people actually are underrating Nico right now. His team is not a good team. It's just that it's hidden by the names. The names make you think, well, that's not true. Thorn, he has a lot of help. No, he doesn't. Like, that team's actually not very good. And he is still a fucking banging player. And if you put him tomorrow into a better team, you like put him on Team Liquid, mate, instead of Twists. They'll fucking be the best team in the world. Yeah. Like, they're like, maybe not like absolutely, but like the challenge for it put out where they'd be incredibly good. So the problem is, the real question is the eternal question. At this point, I don't think we're ever going to get an answer, mate, which is when is too much for you, Nico? When? Just say when, mate. As soon as you say when, we can stop the water torture. He's like, this is fine. It's perfectly fine for me. It's like, so unfortunately, that guy. I mean, the sad thing is, in a way, I sort of respect it. I respect people who think that they know the right way and that they trust their own instincts. It's just in this sense, you also have to be willing to like look when reality doesn't match up with it and go, am I fucking up right now? Am I doing the wrong move? And I don't know if he ever does that latter part there. I feel like he just goes, come on, bro, we're going to fucking have holiday and then we come back, 60 hours a week. We're coming back. I don't know why he's fucking Turkish in this example. I obviously can't do like fucking Bosnian accent or whatever kind of like. So I was going with something there. You get the premise. So yeah, like, the only way you can fix that team, in my opinion, is you have to literally say to Nico, "Congrats, you've been promoted. You're the star player. That's all you're doing now, right? This guy's the IGL. Here's your new coach. Let's go to town."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the cognitive dissonance and sunk cost fallacy in his brain is probably, he can't forget.
They're the best team in the world at deflecting all the blame. You notice it never falls back onto them.
Yeah.
Like, what's mad is what you even said earlier is another great example of a CSGO myth. Like, it's the idea that, like, Olofmeister's anywhere close to what Olofmeister used to be. I know no one says he's the best player, but people still say stupid shit like, FaZe is like 5 sick aimers, bro. Like, what are you talking about? What year are you talking about? You got a DeLorean or something? Like, what sick aimers? As far as I can tell, they've got 2 sick aimers. I don't even think coldzera's a sick aimer, so I don't even know where that thing comes from. So, to me, why is Olof in the team still?
Yeah.
And I get, here's the thing. It's one of those moves again. This is how you know players make the moves. I get why Olof wants to be in FaZe. I just don't know why FaZe want Olof to be in FaZe.
Yeah, it's just but I get why each individual player in FaZe wants to play with Olof, which is because
that's what I don't get though.
Well, it's because he was for 2 years, or at least a year, best player in the world, and you looked at him and he was the best player in the world. It was like
no, but it's like the Forest angle.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
I was going to say that.
It's like eventually you've got to look and say like that isn't who he is anymore, though. Yeah. And it's actually not. Like I've always thought that was. I mean, to be fair, they do that in sports. I will admit. Is if you ever see interviews with people who played with great sports stars at the end of their career, they always lie and say, like, "No, it was just a shame. Yeah, he was still just as good, but I think he was just older." Or it's like, shut the fuck up. You're on about he was fat Ronaldo at that point in time. He's dog shit. Like you're making out like you're stepping over the ball all the time, wrecking everyone. Like that was 7 years before. What are you talking about? Like obviously he wasn't that good. So my problem is that it's like
that's Ronaldo's amazing.
It's a good analogy, isn't it? Because obviously he's a good example of someone who just fell off like a motherfucker.
But he was also the best. For me, he's like the best player of all time. Like at the time.
Oh no, people don't realize he was simple.
Yeah,
he was. Like mate, when he was in Barcelona. This is why modern day football fans on Reddit are just fucking plebs from the last 12 years. Because, mate, I do agree with the way modern football is played. Unsurprisingly, the best players now are the best at modern football. Yeah. But with the way football was played back then, I'd take Ronaldo, fat Ronaldo when he wasn't fat, over fucking most of I'd take him over probably both Ronaldo and Messi.
Yeah.
The guy was a monster. He just couldn't. He just scored all the time on his own.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
He was like simple. It was mental, wasn't it?
This is unbelievable. Yeah.
Probably the most underrated player of all time at this point because no one even puts him in the GOAT debate, do they?
I mean, yeah, it's hard because of the how many balls the Messi now has and so on.
Oh, of course. Yeah. That's why those accomplishments will always just fucking ruin the game, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, those are like, the most hilarious thing about that, by the way, is that even in football, they turned the individual award into a team award. Go and look at the years they won. Right, Messi won all the years when Barcelona won everything. Then Ronaldo won all the years when Real Madrid won. Like, fuck off. They're the teams winning.
Yeah.
There's 11 players.
Yeah.
But anyway, the point of that analogy
was... one of those. One, was HLTV number one once. And
basically, in that scenario, like... I guess the biggest cognitive dissonance is this. I mean, we've said it on By the Numbers, right? Nico, it was almost like that meme. You know the meme where it's like no one, and then someone just says something. And the reason the joke is like, well, why are you just saying that when no one even said it? It was like no one, and then Nico goes like, but I don't want LXCB. It's like, what the fuck? Why would you even say that out loud? Like, what? Holy shit. Like, even if you think that, bro, like, why say it in an interview? Because anyone who knows anything about PR knows... You are aware, Nico, if LXCB becomes good now and your team doesn't do loads of shit, you're going to look really stupid right now. Yeah. It's like, what do you mean, bro? I don't look like... Again, he's from fucking Istanbul or something, but whatever. You get the premise. So, like, the weird thing is that Nico, as long as your player tag says Olofmeister, can watch you do nothing in a game for 3 months. But if your player tag's something else, you can be at 1.5 times the player and he doesn't want to play with you because to him, he's like, but you're way worse than me.
Yeah, I mean, I bet
that dissonance is crazy, isn't it?
I bet he looks at Forest and he thinks, why are they still keeping him? And yeah,
mate, I'll tell you the best example of that. I don't know if you remember this. I think it was back when he was in Team Liquid, but Simple actually said something mental that Forest was still the best player or something like back in like fucking 2016. Something mental. Like, we're talking like a couple of years after he was even that good in CS:GO anymore.
Yeah.
And exactly for that, like, all he would remember was the one big game he had or the one time he went off against him in a game,
Yeah. And the aura, like, it just too many people respect him and then yeah.
No, but that's what's weird is you would think it's because it's this is also why like words and ideas are magical. Like, because essentially the way they affect the world is they control human minds. And when you control human minds, you control the world, the way they perceive the world. So as a result, a name like Olofmeister or Forest, like, becomes more than the player in the server. It becomes powerful and it gets all this status attached to it. That takes a long time to diminish and sometimes never does. So what's weird is you can be a player who's way better now than Forest was. So let me think of a player. Let me think. Oh, Valde, there you go. It's an obvious example.
Yeah.
Right? He's a way better player now than Forest is. But if you asked Nico who he'd rather play with, he'd probably fucking say Forest, mate.
Yeah.
Like, the magical power's too high. So what's mad is when he sees Valde, his brain goes, way worse player than me. I think he's a bit overrated, personally. Then you go, what about Forrest? He goes, I think he could still be sick, bro. He's a very good player. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is madness. This is like Mandela effect or some shit. What are you talking about? In my universe, he's played out.
Yeah.
It's the way that's also the sort of role I'm now cast into. I have to be the one guy who hates on the fucking greatest players of all time because every other motherfucker just overrates them so much that becomes like, it sounds like that's all I'm doing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But someone has to do it.
Someone has to do this story. And
they do. Someone does, sadly. And what people don't get is, you've nailed it there, mate. People think I'm just being controversial. I'm actually just doing the hard part of being a historian. I'm telling people, no, even if they say right now he's as good, he's nowhere close.
Yeah. Yeah, just correcting it's even insulting to say, that
it really is, isn't it?
Same player.
It's the same reason why, even when another great example, when Astralis started winning all these tournaments, so much for their era ending, their peak Astralis. It's like, it was only a year ago. Do you not remember what peak Astralis was like? They were unbeatable. Like, they only lost, as far as I can tell, because they're human beings. Like, they almost never lost. Like, think of any time Astralis, the previous year, actually lost because someone legit beat them. It's hard to think. Like, maybe when FaZe did that insane run with Exist, when like Guardian and Nico just went God mode, maybe that time when it was like super narrow 3-map win. Aside from that, they just looked like they lost because no one can play 10 out of 10 level all the time. That's why they would still win the tournament usually.
Yeah, even when the tournament started, it was, well, Astralis 90% chance of winning this one, whereas now it's like, well, probably Astralis, but maybe not. Maybe, one of these three.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.